You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you cared too much for too long, in silence, and it broke something you couldn't fix anymore. Most people won't understand that, but you will. This is the psychology of people who cut everyone off. There are few actions more misunderstood than cutting people off completely. Friends, family, relationships. One day you're there, the next you're gone. And suddenly you're labeled cold, heartless, too extreme. The world sees the ending, the silence, the distance you created. But they don't see what came before. They don't see the months you spent trying, the conversations you initiated, the effort you gave when nothing came back. They don't see the version of you that bent until breaking felt inevitable. Here's what most people miss. People who walk away usually give too many chances, not too few. They stay when it hurts. They stay when they're drained. They stay far longer than they should. And then one day, they don't. Not because they stopped caring, but because staying started to mean abandoning themselves. Cutting someone off isn't a switch. It's a slow, painful decision, built on months, sometimes years, of one-sided effort. It happens when your peace becomes a high price to pay just to keep someone in your life. It's when staying starts to cost your sense of self. When you notice you're explaining basic needs like they're unreasonable requests. When you're apologizing for feelings you didn't choose to have. When the relationship requires you to be smaller, quieter, less honest than you actually are. And explaining yourself starts to feel like begging for oxygen. You tried, you adjusted, you gave them the benefit of the doubt more times than you can count. Until one day, something shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, in the part of you that finally says enough. So you do the unthinkable. You choose distance, even if it hurts, even if no one understands. Most people think walking away is about anger or punishment. They assume you're being petty, holding a grudge, overreacting. But psychologically, it's often the freeze or flight response. It's your nervous system making a decision your mind hasn't fully put into words yet. When your emotions have been denied, dismissed, or manipulated repeatedly, your body starts keeping score, even when you're not consciously aware of it. Your nervous system goes into protection mode. It stops trying to fix what feels unfixable. It stops reaching for connection that only drains you. You shut down. You step back. You detach. Not because you gave up on the other person, but because you refuse to keep giving up on yourself. This isn't coldness. It's self-preservation dressed in silence. And sometimes, walking away is the kindest thing you can do for both of you. It wasn't just one thing. It was a slow collapse, tiny moments, over and over. The kind that are hard to point to in an argument because they sound small when you say them out loud. You tolerated being talked over, ignored, taken for granted. You watched your needs get minimized, your boundaries treated like suggestions. Maybe you gave more than you had. Maybe you waited for an apology that never came. Maybe you kept hoping they'd notice you were fading, but they didn't. Or worse, they did, and it didn't change anything. And one day, you felt something in your spirit say enough. Not in anger, not in bitterness, just in clarity. You don't have to shrink for this. You don't have to keep making yourself digestible for people who refuse to truly see you. Here's what most people miss. Walking away isn't about cruelty. It's about survival. It's about recognizing that some connections, no matter how much history they hold, cost more than they give. Cutting someone off is a way to say, I love me enough not to stay in things that twist my insides quietly. It's choosing your nervous system over their comfort, your peace over their expectations, your emotional safety over the appearance of loyalty. It's not easy. It's rarely done without pain. There's guilt, there's second-guessing. There's the weight of knowing someone might never understand why you left. But sometimes loving from a distance is the only way to avoid losing yourself completely. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is stop pretending you're okay when you're not. And that takes more courage than most people realize. People assume you're fine after you cut someone off. They think it was easy for you, that you're cold enough not to care. But what they don't see is the grief. The quiet, complicated kind that doesn't fit neatly into conversations. The memories, the wondering, the guilt. The part of you that replays moments and questions if you could have done it differently, if maybe you were too harsh, too quick, too unforgiving, because even when you're the one who walked away, are all cutoffs healthy? No. Do some people use silence as punishment? Yes. Some people walk away to avoid accountability, to escape uncomfortable growth, to control or manipulate. But the difference is this: intent. Are you walking away because it's easier or because it's finally right? Are you escaping accountability or creating safety? Are you running from every hard conversation or protecting yourself from one that never leads anywhere? These are questions only you can answer honestly. No outside advice can answer that perfectly, but your body can. Your nervous system knows the difference between avoidance and liberation. And if your nervous system feels calmer now, if you're sleeping better, if the knot in your chest has loosened, chances are you did what you needed to do. Healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like walking away and finally breathing again. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not the problem. You're likely a deep-feeling person in a world that doesn't ask how you're really doing. A person who notices everything, who feels the temperature of a room, who carries other people's emotions without even meaning to. You've probably stayed loyal for too long, silenced your discomfort, and convinced yourself you were too sensitive, that you were overreacting, being dramatic, expecting too much. But you're not sensitive. You're aware. You just finally listened to what your body and heart have been quietly trying to tell you for years. That not every connection deserves your energy. That some people aren't meant to stay in your life, no matter how much you once cared. And that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. Few people talk about this pattern, but it's more common than you think, especially among those who feel deeply and love quietly. If you've had to cut someone off to protect your energy, to reclaim your peace, to rebuild who you were before the chaos, that doesn't make you bad. It makes you honest. It makes you someone who finally chose themselves after choosing everyone else for far too long. You don't need to explain yourself if it costs you your peace to be understood. You don't need to justify your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. You're allowed to love quietly and still walk away completely. You're allowed to care about someone and still know they're not safe for you. You're allowed to grieve and feel relief at the same time. Some people won't understand that. They'll call it cold. They'll call it unfair. But the right ones will. The ones who've also had to choose silence over suffering. Starting here. If this spoke to something you don't always have words for, consider staying. This channel isn't about fixing you or pushing you to be more social, more forgiving, more available. It's about understanding the quiet decisions you've had to make just to stay whole. This channel is for the quiet ones, the feelers, the people who process deeply and need time alone to make sense of things, the ones who've been called too much and not enough in the same breath, the people who walk away not because they stopped loving, but because they finally started loving themselves. If that's you, you're not alone, and you're not broken for needing distance to heal. You belong here.